Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has wasted no time in taking Mark Carney to task on his election promises of turning Canada into an energy powerhouse. This out of the National Post. Smith wants to negotiate Alberta Accord, guaranteeing pipelines and more federal cash. Alberta's premier said she will also put a referendum on the ballot if a petition gets enough signatures. That's right, guys. Her powerful bargaining chip? Separation. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Jonny Says So, episode 43. And today, I want to talk about Danielle Smith's recent address to Alberta, Canada, and Mark Carney. Now, before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to smash the like button and hit subscribe. Now, Alberta is hardly the first province to air grievances with Ottawa over its bloated centralized government. Whether it's fisheries disputes in Newfoundland, agriculture in Saskatchewan, hydropower in Manitoba, or whatever the hell Quebec wants, it's hard to deny that provinces are not getting a fair deal for what they bring to the table, and have long disputed equalization. And no province has been more vocal about this than Alberta. But given the recent election of Mark Carney and his very concerning past rhetoric on pushing net zero agendas, contrasted with his election promises of turning Canada into an energy-producing powerhouse, in his words, Albertans are skeptical about what Mark Carney is going to do for their province. And it's a volatile time because a lot of people are talking about separation. Gov.exe is corrupt, putting this out on Twitter. Danielle Smith claims Ottawa has made Canada a hostile place to work and do business in, causing $500 billion in lost investment, thousands of jobs, a weakened economy, and impoverished Canadians. It's hard to disagree. Ottawa is filled with tyrants. It's time for a national divorce. Pretty strong words. I don't say I agree with the national divorce part of it, though. I think that's certainly on the table. And I think that if Mark Carney's government turns out to be as terrible as people are predicting, it might come to that, but I'm hoping it doesn't. But anyways, I do digress. Let's take a look at this clip of Danielle Smith airing out her grievances.
My fellow Albertans, today I wish to speak to you about the future of Alberta and Canada. We know how blessed our province is with an endowment of natural resources that no other country on earth possesses. And we want all of our friends, families, and fellow Canadians across the country to benefit from it. For the last 10 years, successive Liberal governments in Ottawa, supported by their new Democrat allies, have unleashed a tidal wave of laws, policies, and political attacks aimed directly at Alberta's free economy, and in effect, against the future and livelihoods of our people. They have blocked new pipelines with C-69, cancelled multiple oil and gas projects, and banned the very tanker ships needed to carry those resources to new markets.
And that's an important point that she brings up, because Mark Carney has repeatedly campaigned on cutting off the Americans from our oil resources and instead doing business with Europe. What do you need to get oil over to Europe? Tankers.
They have stacked an oil and gas production cap on top of a crippling industrial carbon tax, making new energy and agricultural projects economically impossible to pursue without massive subsidies from governments, which Ottawa has failed to provide and which our taxpayers cannot afford. This onslaught.
And this is a great point too, because she's talking obviously about equalization payments to other provinces. It's not that she's against them, but she's rightfully pointing out that with infrastructure and healthcare being absolutely crippled all across the country, it's not evident that these payments are really being put to effective use.
Of anti-energy, anti-agriculture, and anti-resource development policies have scared away global investments to the tune of $500 billion, driving those investments and jobs out of Alberta and Canada to much more attractive investment climates in the United States, Asia, and the Middle East. Having traveled much of the world these past few years, it is evident that Canada is not viewed as an attractive place to invest in resource development, manufacturing, or agriculture because of our high carbon taxes, endless red tape, and the uncertainty and chaos brought about by these and other federal government policies. As a result, Canada has fallen to dead last in economic growth among industrialized nations. The world looks at us like we've lost our minds. We have the most abundant and accessible natural.
A lot of Canadians look at the federal government as if we've lost our minds.
Resources of any country on earth, and yet we landlock them, sell what we do produce to a single customer to the south of us, while enabling polluting dictatorships to eat our lunch. For Albertans, these attacks on our province by our own federal government have become unbearable. It has cost us a decade of opportunities and tens of billions in lost royalties that could have been invested in the health, education, infrastructure, and social services Albertans and Canadians need. And what's worse, Ottawa continues onward with more destructive policies.
Now, what she says there is important. Remember that when the media tries to tell you that she is doing this just for the benefit of Alberta alone. That's what it'll be if they end up voting to separate. But let's hope it doesn't come to that point, guys.
They've imposed net zero mandates on our natural gas-based power grid, causing investment in reliable generation from natural gas to flee, thereby endangering the future stability of our power grid and risking future blackouts and spikes in electricity costs for Alberta families and businesses. They have attacked our food producers with methane taxes, onerous regulations on fertilizer, electric vehicle mandates, and many other destructive policies that have hiked costs on our farmers and ranchers and driven billions of dollars of investment in agriculture elsewhere. They've interfered in provincial jurisdiction time and again, from taking over the regulation of plastics to mandating how we operate childcare, healthcare, and dental care, to harassing law-abiding firearms owners, to dozens of other examples of unconstitutional interference.
Now, this is Danielle Smith putting all of her cards on the table and letting Mark Carney know that he had better make good on his election promises of pipelines and allowing Alberta to develop its resources and ship them to new markets. Now, she also set forth a list of demands as well. Canada Proud putting this out on Twitter. Do you think Mark Carney will agree to this?
Alberta will be taking steps to better protect ourselves from Ottawa. As a start, I will soon appoint a special negotiating team to represent our province in negotiations with the federal government on the following reforms requested by our province. We hope this will result in a binding agreement that Albertans can have confidence in. Call it an Alberta Accord, if you will. First, Alberta requires guaranteed corridor and port access to tidewater off the Pacific, Arctic, and Atlantic coasts for the international export of Alberta oil.
Better talk to the Bloc Québécois about that if you want to get it out to the East Coast. Just saying.
Gas, critical minerals, and other resources in amounts supported by the free market rather than by the dictates and whims of Ottawa. Every province in the country, other than Alberta and Saskatchewan, have coastal port access, and no province needs it more given the size and value of our resources. This will benefit all Canadians to the tune of trillions of dollars of economic activity, including billions for First Nations partners.
And there it is, guys. Don't let the media tell you that she is not thinking about the rest of Canada, because obviously, in lieu of ridiculously lopsided equalization payments, there has to be something in it for the other provinces to allow the pipelines to go through and, dealing with all of their goods at their ports. I personally think this could be a boom for Atlantic Canada.
Second, the federal government must end all federal interference in the development of provincial resources by repealing the No New Pipelines Law, C-69, the oil tanker ban, the net zero electricity regulations, the oil and gas emissions cap, the net zero vehicle mandate, and any federal law or regulation that purports to regulate industrial carbon emissions, plastics, or the commercial free speech of energy companies. These laws are destroying investment confidence and costing Canada and Alberta hundreds of billions in investments each year. They need to go. Third, The federal government must refrain from imposing export taxes or restrictions on the export of Alberta resources without the consent of the government of Alberta. Frankly, all provinces should be given that same respect for their resources.
Very well said.
And fourth, the federal government must provide to Alberta the same per capita federal transfers and equalization as is received by the other three largest provinces, Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia. We have no issue with Alberta continuing to subsidize smaller provinces with their needs, but there is no excuse for such large and powerful economies like Ontario, Quebec, BC, or Alberta to be subsidizing one another. That was never the intent of equalization, and it needs to end. If these points can be agreed to by the federal government, I am convinced it will not only make Alberta and Canada an infinitely stronger and more prosperous country, but will eliminate the doubts a growing number of Albertans feel about the future of Alberta in Canada.
And if these points can't be agreed to by the federal government, I'm convinced that we are going to be in a very precarious situation in this country as Alberta seriously looks at holding a referendum to separate from the rest of the country. And it wouldn't surprise me if BC, Saskatchewan, or even Manitoba couldn't be convinced to join them. Now, again, guys, I don't want to see that happen. You know, I'm nostalgic for the country that I naively thought existed and very well maybe never has existed. But I think this place is worth saving. And that's my show for tonight, guys. Now, I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments. Do you think Danielle Smith's demands are reasonable? Do you think Mark Carney's going to take them seriously? And do you think it's a real possibility that we could see a referendum on Western separation in the next couple of years? And as always, guys, if you like what you see, smash the like button, subscribe, and share it out on your social media. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.